Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is the safety of the world. Now, not to sound hyperbolic, the safety of the world is at stake. Iran has been cruising towards new heights in their mission to become world leaders. And for some misguided motives, American media has been shielding much of the material informing world leaders from the American public. And that's a shame. It's negligent, I would say. The Israeli defense minister has delivered a far more sobering assessment of Iran's current nuclear status than the news that appears on our mainstream screens and on our websites. Yoav Gallant, former commander of the Southern Command for the Israeli Defense Forces, now serving as the Minister of Defense in Netanyahu's government, has expressed the intel that Iran now has enough highly enriched fissile material for 5 nuclear bombs. 5. They do not yet, however, he believes, have the delivery system or the trigger mechanism for this nuclear arsenal. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is also in agreement. We can assume that their assessment is spot on. It's accurate. From the Iranian reaction to Gallant's and Netanyahu's observations, that's what we can tell. Iranian leadership quickly responded to the comments with a warning to Israel, expressed in highly exaggerated and hyperbolic terms, not to attack Iran. The response carried an addendum. Iran has capabilities to destroy Israel, they said. At the same time, Iran also sealed an unexpected deal with Saudi Arabia at the very same time. Unexpected because it was thought that the Saudis were moving closer to the West and even inching towards joining the Arab nations in signing on the Abraham Accords with Israel. Then suddenly, out of the blue, they joined together with Iran. Historically, and we are talking about a history that spans thousands of years here, they are arch enemies. China and Russia are, of course, a part of this new nexus. Together, China, Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia have forged a brand new, dangerous team in a brand new global arena. In an interview on CNBC conducted by Hadley Gamble, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu was asked about Iran's new global friends and partners. His response was straightforward. I'm quoting exactly from the transcript here. Those who partner with Iran partner with misery. Look at Lebanon, look at Yemen, look at Syria, look at Iraq. 95% of the problems in the Middle East emanate from Iran, unquote. Israel, the eternally optimistic Jewish state, is counting on the Saudis to eventually join the Abraham Accords. A Saudi signature on the Accords would be the most significant partnering of all. Because of all that Saudi Arabia represents, that signature would, for Israel, symbolize the end, essentially, to the intractable Arab-Israeli conflict. Media coverage throughout the Middle East and Far East, again, have often ignored, and been ignored by the American media, has been the announcement of that China has volunteered to mediate, let's say, for instance, between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Imagine that. Asked whether Israel would agree to a Chinese mediation, Netanyahu said, I'm quoting again, I'm not aware of any specific offer of this kind. Diplomatically, the Israeli Prime Minister added, look, we respect China. We deal with China a great deal. But we also know we have an indispensable alliance with our great friend, the United States. Realistically, there is no way that Israel would agree to the Chinese role in talks with the Palestinians. It's totally unrealistic. Israel does not trust China. China's grandiose gesture is plainly and clearly a move to further oust the United States from Middle East politics. It will not happen, but that is not the point. Removing Saudi Arabia, the newcomer and lesser member from this new nexus of my analysis right now, from the discussion just for a moment, the point is that China, Russia, and Iran are successfully turning into a united fulcrum with several important goals. And they want the world to know what those goals are. They are making it clear that they exercise influence in the region and in the world. They are making it clear that their agenda is not the US-Western agenda. They are making it clear that there is no issue that is off their agenda, from intervening and solving the Iran-Saudi conflict to intervening in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The successes that they have reaped awakened Western diplomatic, military, and economic influence. They will weaken it tremendously. And that suits China, Russia, Iran, and now Saudi Arabia just fine. They've created incentives and disincentives for countries in far-flung corners of the world to form policies and build strategy together with them. At this very moment, Iran is feeling stronger than they have ever felt in a very, very long time. And that is why Israel right now most certainly has plans, together with the support of the United States of America, to strike Iran on multiple levels, to eliminate the Iranian nuclear threat, and then to defend itself against the inevitable counterattack from Iran. The question now is not if Israel will follow through with their plan. The question is when. Coming up next, Points of View. First up is a column from the Allgemeiner and was published on May 3rd, 2023. The column is written by a student named Sarah Bluestein, who studies at the University of Western Ontario in Canada. Her essay is particularly poignant. Bluestein describes the Jew hatred she experienced in class. It was for her a rude and very unfortunate awakening. The column is entitled, "I Experienced Anti-Semitism in College. I Won't Be Silenced Again." The column begins this way. Until a few months ago, I could have shared how lucky I was to have never experienced anti-Semitism. That's no longer true. As a first-year Jewish student at the University of Western Ontario, I have felt safe and accepted in my community. However, a recent first-hand experience of anti-Semitism has left me fearful. During one of my classes, we had a discussion period, which led to an uncomfortable conversation regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Prior to our discussion, the lesson focused on the struggles of the indigenous people who have and continue to face horrific colonial oppression in Canada. The floor was open to any student to ask questions or share thoughts. A student in my class shared how she felt she could really understand and sympathize with the oppression of the indigenous people in Canada because she was Palestinian. She said the oppression her people faced was the result of the settler colonialization in her country, similarly to what the indigenous people went through in Canada. As she spoke, she was very meticulous in how she phrased her comments. She never mentioned Jews, making her statement not seem directed at anyone or any people specifically. Being Jewish, I immediately understood what she was implying. As she continued, I found myself sinking further into my seat. It only made me feel worse when my professor enthusiastically agreed and joined in on the biased, one-sided rhetoric. At that moment, I felt so alone and fearful as everyone nodded their heads in agreement. As Bluestein writes of her experience, one cannot but help feel her discomfort and her fear. She describes how difficult it was for her. She was being attacked. What she believes to be righteous and wonderful ideas were being denigrated and inverted into oppressive evils. She continues, "During class that day, I was too scared to speak up. I feared the repercussions of identifying myself as a Jewish student or speaking up and saying the wrong thing. I needed more time to come up with an educated response that was not made from fear or anger. I let the fear overwhelm me and I remained speechless. Since then, I've promised myself that next time I won't be silenced. I made the decision to improve my advocating skills and freshen up my knowledge on the conflict, slowly growing my confidence as I learn how to respond to anti-Semitism. Still, I fear that my Jewish identity being known could interfere with my education. I hope one day I and other Jewish students who have experienced similar anti-Semitism will feel confident to act. Bluestein concludes by connecting her experience to that of her grandmother, a Holocaust survivor. And here she writes, although we should be granted the freedom of sharing our opinions, making false accusations regarding colonialism and Israel is hateful, anti-Semitic, and completely unacceptable. My great-grandmother, who survived the Holocaust, came to Canada, and for the rest of her life was always fearful to reveal she was Jewish. I never thought I could feel the same, but I do, and that's sad. It's very important that we understand just how difficult it is for young adults today who love Israel. They need our support. They need our help. The terrain on campus and in social environments is rough, and it's tough for lovers of Israel, young and old. We need to band together. Next up is a column by Ron Ben-Ishai from Ynet. It was published on May 3rd, 2023. This column is entitled, Israel's Losses and Gains in Lax Response to Gaza Rockets. Subtitled, opinion, Netanyahu knows he lacks international support for a major military offensive in Gaza, might be accused by opponents of seeking to weaken ongoing demonstrations against his judicial policies, and could even see refusal of reservists to serve. The subtitle tells the whole story. Now, Ron Ben-Ishai is one of the most astute observers and analysts of the Middle East, especially on issues of military strategy. He is a profound thinker, and often one of the only clear voices to be found in the region. He is always worthwhile reading, even when I disagree with some of his analysis. The column was prompted by the recent hostilities between Israel and her neighbors in Gaza. This is how Ron Ben-Ishai begins. Israel and the Gaza factions had an interest to end the latest cycle of cross-border violence, so a ceasefire was achieved overnight, mediated by Egypt and the UN envoy to the region. Absurdly, Israel did not announce the agreement to halt fire because it refuses to admit it negotiates, even indirectly with terror groups, and the success of the agreed deal is still in the hands of splinter groups in the Strip who are not entirely under the control of Hamas or even Islamic Jihad. Rockets launched after the ceasefire was announced were in line with the practice of the Palestinians to have the last word, one that cost Hamas and the PIJ, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, more damage in Israeli strikes. Hamas did not launch its own rockets and allowed the PIJ to fire over 100 in response to the death of its senior member on Tuesday. But it launched tiny rockets at Israeli aircraft, knowing that they had little chance of hitting their target, but would cause the Iron Dome missiles defense system to pick them up and set off sirens, sending residents into shelters. That was a win for Hamas at little cost. It's true, it was very little cost for them. Ben-Ishai now asks and answers the most vexing question of all. He asks why Israel did not respond to the over 100 rockets shot in a single night. Here is his answer. But why did Israel not respond more forcefully to over 100 rockets? And why is the all-right-wing government doing nothing to restore deterrence along the border? One possible explanation is the current focus of the military is on the West Bank and the possible violence that could erupt in the wake of Qadr Adnan, an Islamic Jihad prisoner who died in jail. Sooner or later, the forces will have to launch a major operation in Jenin and Nablus to dissuade, at least temporarily, terror groups from action there. Another explanation is that Israel opted to end the latest cycle fearing the lack of international backing for an Israeli offensive after a prisoner died while in its custody. Ben-Ishai now concludes by explaining the real dilemma that Netanyahu is embroiled in. It's political. It's not defensive or security-wise. He writes, if Netanyahu was to order an extensive military offensive, he would be accused of attempting to silence public opposition to him that has brought hundreds of thousands of Israelis to weekly demonstrations over 17 weeks and might even cause reservists to refuse to show up when called. There is no doubt that the internal political rift causes an appearance of weakness that may invite enemies to attack. It also weakens the Prime Minister and other decision makers who must take public support into account. A united home front is vital in any conflict. Israel's only substantive gain this time round is that it did not succumb to the demands of PIJ, prisoner Adnan, to be released due to his hunger strike, and may not be coerced by others in the future. A precise, concise, and an excellent analysis. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. I'm going to show you 6 cartoons and memes. Like many of you, I've been following this story for months. The headline and the picture tell most of the stories. Art gallery tapes picture to the wall after student eats original. The museum allowed the tape a fresh banana to the wall surrounding 4 gray lines and called it art. One day, a student actually ate the banana. After the student ate the banana, the artist agreed that the museum could replace his artwork with a photo taping of the exact place of where the banana was. This is modern art. The student who ate the banana understood exactly the meaning of this particular work of art. This next meme is a meme of a cat assuming the position of a speaker in front of a live microphone. The cat says, "I don't have a question for the panel, more of a comment. If you do not know this already, the most popular content on internet is pet stills and pet videos. They're even more popular than kids and even more popular than porn." Along the same vein, here is a picture of dogs that is perfect when it comes to understanding the mood of the picture and the story it tells. It's perfect for an album cover. The meme reads, "I don't know their musical style, but I'd buy this album." When you look at the dogs, you can understand exactly what they're talking about here. As we know, artificial intelligence, aka AI, is in the form of ChatGPT, can rewrite anything. And the Hollywood scriptwriters went on strike a few days ago. And many of the programs rely heavily on their writers, like late night TV. They went into reruns. Here we have a look inside an office of a scripting course. The course number is 101010101. And it has a robot sitting and punching on the keyboard. And the writer's strike rolls on, is what the caption reads. Next cartoon has Syrian President Assad and Iranian President Raisi sitting atop mountains of skulls and clanking their glasses, which is spilling over in blood, and they're toasting each other for their accomplishments. The leaders of Iran and Syria are mending fences, but they are both brutal regimes. Brutal. This next cartoon is of a guru on top of a mountain. As a hiker ascends, the guru asks the hiker, "Have you traveled far to seek wisdom?" The hiker answers, "No, I just wanted to get away from all the King Charles's coronation news coverage. I know that many people are engrossed by the pomp and the history, but there are also some, like the hiker here, who have reached their saturation point of the coronation." In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. The White House Correspondents Association dinner, known for its fun and ferocious jabs at Washington, took a more solemn tone this year as President Joe Biden acknowledged the several American journalists who are under siege in authoritarian countries around the world. He said, "We are here to send a message to the country and, quite frankly, to the world. The free press is a pillar, maybe the pillar, of a free society, not the enemy." The President and First Lady Jill Biden met privately with the parents of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, who has been imprisoned in Russia since March. Several guests at the dinner wore buttons that read, "Free Evan." U.S. General Michael E. Kurilla, commander of the United States Central Command, CENTCOM as it's called, visited Israel as a guest of Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi. According to the IDF, Kurilla toured military bases and met with senior defense officials. CENTCOM and Israel have a very close relationship, but there are certain things that can only be conveyed face to face. Even with double encryption and secure lines, face to face is the best way to relay and discuss important issues. There is no doubt that the discussion was about Israel's plans to preemptively strike Iran. Reuters reported that Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan announced that Turkish intelligence forces killed Islamic leader Abu Hussein al-Qarashi in Syria. In an interview with TRT Turk, Erdogan said, "This individual was neutralized as part of an operation by Turkish National Intelligence Organization in Syria." The president of Turkey further explained that the intelligence organization had been following Qarashi for a long time. This is a significant setback for ISIS in the region. 375 pounds of snack food, fruit roll-up was confiscated at Ben Gurion Airport. Their suitcases contained nothing else. The stash was taken from Israelis returning from abroad. They were actually American Israelis. The price of this dried fruit snack has skyrocketed in Israel. The couple was probably intending to sell the 375 pounds of what we used to call fruit leather. You might ask, as I am certain a couple was asking themselves when they were arrested, this isn't drugs or any type of contraband, why confiscate it? The reason is that, just like anything else, it's not for personal use. One cannot just pack suitcases full of food and snacks and bring it to Israel, or for that matter to the United States. One needs an import license to do that. To resell things, one needs an import license. It needs to be designated as safe. These 375 pounds were going to be resold, there's no doubt about that. This was an unsuccessful attempt to smuggle the snack into Israel. In a surprising and welcome move, the French Parliament struck down a motion to call Israel an apartheid regime. The French National Assembly voted the resolution down with an amazing number of 199 to 71 majority. This is hopefully a sign for the future positive pro-Israel moves from European parliaments towards Israel. The Arab League has invited Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to attend the Arab League summit later this month with one condition. And that condition is, if he wishes, Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abdul Gate made the announcement after Syria was readmitted to the Arab League. Responding to the question over whether Assad could participate at the summit in Saudi Arabia, Abdul Gate told the news conference in Cairo, if he wishes, because Syria started from this evening, is a full member of the Arab League, and from tomorrow morning, they have the right to occupy any seat. But not everyone is in favor of Syria's readmittance into the Arab League. The United States criticized Syria's readmission into the Arab League. The United States has indicated that Damascus does not merit being brought back into the group, and raised questions about the willingness of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to resolve the crisis resulting from Syria's civil war. According to the State Department, the United States is convinced that Arab partners intend to use this direct engagement with Assad to push to resolve the country's long-standing crisis. And Washington is aligned with its allies on the ultimate objectives. But yet, the United States does not believe that Syria deserves to be brought back into the Arab League and have a seat at that table. Israel has just released Jordanian parliamentarian Imad El-Adwan, who was arrested last month at the King Hussein border crossing over the Jordan River. This is the boundary between Jordan and Israel. The parliamentarian was arrested after weapons and gold were found in the suitcases, over 100 weapons, you should note. Al-Adwan was returned to Jordan after the prosecution in Israel chose not to remand him to custody. Israel and the Jordanian government agreed that he would be prosecuted in Amman. Since 2021, Israel has seized over 190 crypto accounts at the crypto exchange Binance, including 2 accounts that Israel says are linked to the Islamic State, ISIS, and dozens of others that Israel says are owned by Palestinian firms connected to Islamic Hamas. In January of 2023, Israel's National Bureau of Counter-Terror Financing confiscated 2 more Binance accounts. According to the NBCTF, the website, the seizure was intended to, quote, thwart the activity of Islamic State and impair its ability to further its goals. The document detailing the seizures, which has not been previously reported, did not give any details on the value of the crypto seized, nor how the accounts were connected to ISIS. The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog warned that the situation around the Russian-held Zaporizhzhia, the nuclear plant, had become increasingly and unpredictably potentially dangerous, and called for measures to ensure its safe operation. Rafael Grossi, Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, issued a warning in view of what he said were evacuations underway in the nearby town of En-Hodar, ordered by the local Russian-installed governor. He said, "I'm extremely concerned about the very real nuclear safety and security risks facing the plant. We must act now to prevent the threat of a severe nuclear accident and its associated consequences for the population and the environment." Russian forces seized Zaporizhzhia, the plant, days after Vladimir Putin ordered the invasion of Ukraine in February of last year, 2022. Exchanges of fire have frequently occurred nearby and near the facility, with each side blaming the other. Grossi has repeatedly warned of the dangers of military operations. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. Did you know that it is almost Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day? I'm a firm believer in preparing for special occasions and special events like this, like Yom Yerushalayim. And being prepared helps make them even more special for us and for our thoughts, even for our analysis, but getting our minds used to it. Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, is the anniversary of the day on which the city of Jerusalem was reunited during the 6 Days War. You see, between 1948 and 1967, in other words, from the time the State of Israel was created until the 1967 war, the old city of Jerusalem, which of course included the Western Wall, was in the hands of Jordan. As a result of the 6 Days War, Israel was now in control of the area where the first and second temples and the remains of those temples stand in the form of the Western Wall. Please note that I call it the Western Wall or the Kotel, not the Wailing Wall. It is the western supporting wall upon which the temple was built. The Wailing Wall is the name used by people who think Jews went to cry about their miserable situation that befell them in history. That they went there to wail and cry, hence Wailing Wall. I do not believe that at all. I believe in the magnificence of Jewish history. I believe that our history, like Jerusalem, is majestic and glorious, and most certainly not a vale of tears. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.